Hello and welcome to this video on how to make survival cordage. My name is Philip Tkachuk. I'm an instructor with Alderleaf Wilderness College. Survival cordage is an essential survival tool. It can be useful for 101 things, including parts for traps and snares, a string for a bow and arrow, or for a bow drill friction fire set, lashings for a shelter, fishing line, and many other uses. In this video I'm going to show you how to take the raw material of a stinging nettle stalk and process it into usable cordage like this. I wanted to take this opportunity to show you what stinging nettle stalks look like in the winter once the leaves and the seeds have fallen off. This plant has died back. You can still see it still has some green in the stem. And normally you want to harvest stinging nettle towards the end of summer or early fall. Once they've dropped their seed and they've been out in the elements for a couple of months, the fibers tend to weaken. So it's best to harvest them earlier than this. And when they still have their leaves on them, the leaves are spade-shaped, opposite leaves that have toothed edges, and also this plant is covered in irritating hairs that actually will sting you. They're full of formic acid. So you want to be careful when you're handling them while they're still green and alive. Now at this point we want to talk about pounding the nettle stalk. And the best places to actually concentrate are at these nodes. This is where the leaves actually come out of the stalk itself. And that's where the densest woody material is. So a great way to do that is to get a round rock like this and gently pound those nodes. You notice that I don't pound all of the stalk, only the nodes. This is actually very helpful later on as it makes splitting easier and more consistent. At this point we're going to work on splitting the stalk. A great way to do that is first to crush the stalk down the length with your thumb. If you find that it's too difficult to do, you can use a rock or some other tool. You want to gently crush down the length of the stalk, and then you come back to the base of the stalk and you run your thumb down the inside of it and split it. And the idea behind this is to expose as much of this woody material as possible, so it makes separating the woody inner parts from the soft fibrous outer parts much easier. So once you've gotten to this point, what you can do is use one hand and hold your material so it overhangs just beyond your hand, and use the thumb of your other hand and start breaking the stalk. And you work that wood back and forth and you pull it off of the fibers. You know, notice as I work, more and more of these soft fibers are exposed. And you do this as far down the length of the stalk as you can. You do that. Continue down. So at this point you can see we have the nice soft fibers separated out from the woody fibers, and the fact that I didn't pound the whole length of the stalk made this process a lot easier. So the woody pieces came off in fairly large chunks, as you can see, like this. If I pounded it more, it would have been very hard to separate them. And now the next step is to process this into even finer fiber. And the best way to do that is just to roll it in your hands. This is called buffing. In the buffing process, you're separating the really stringy fibers from that little bit of woody outer bark that's still on them. You want to take your time at this point, and the more time you spend on it, the higher quality cordage you'll get. So here's the material after about 10 to 15 minutes of buffing. You can see it's nice and soft, pliable, and this is the point at which you want to turn this into a piece of actual usable cordage. The next step is called reverse wrapping, and at this point you want to take a hold of your fiber slightly off the central length of your fiber. You don't want to start in the center because it makes the next part of this more difficult, but you want to grab your fiber between two hands. You want to spin with one hand towards yourself, spin with the other hand away from yourself until the tension forms a little loop. You can see a little loop is formed there. Now you want to pinch that loop in your hand, and you want to apply tension to the string, and as you're applying tension you turn it towards yourself, and then you wrap it under away from yourself, and you continue to do that with this piece as well. Towards yourself, wrap it away from yourself. Towards yourself, wrap it away from yourself, and make sure you maintain tension on that loop. You continue down just like that. Towards yourself, wrap away from yourself. As you can see, the material is starting to bind up. Now you can see that I've made some progress. All this fiber down here is wrapped into cordage. And now I'm to the point when I'm starting to run out of cordage material on one side. This is why it's really important to make sure that you don't start in the middle when you're reverse wrapping, because you only want to splice on one side at a time. And for this part, there are different ways to splice. Some recommend just adding material to one side and then continuing down the length, doing a reverse wrap. Now this can work, but what's even better is if you lay the material in like this so that it's wrapped with both sides of the cordage. That way it actually gives you added strength. So you want to add this in here and then continue to reverse wrap just like you were before. You can see I've added my material in at the splice, and I'm continuing to work my way down the length of this fiber and making more cordage. Using this technique you can make a piece of cordage as long as you want. And remember, when you're splicing, to only splice on one side at a time. You don't want to have to splice both ends of the fiber in the same spot because it makes a very weak piece of cordage. In the end, you want to end up with something that looks like this, a nice completed piece of cordage. Have fun practicing with this material, and thanks for watching.